performance.
I know it's difficult to attend to a session after your meals. आमकां गोंयकारांक सुद्दां सवय आमकां जेवल्या उपरांत थोडोसो सुशेग जाय siesta. But I hope this session will not let you sleep, because both of the books which we are going to discuss are related to Goa, mainly Goa. We have two books where we are going to be in conversation with two writers with two books to offer. One is my friend Devidas Kadam, who is a well-known short story and novelist writer, and also we have Radharao Gracias, whom you probably know as a columnist or as an advocate, but then he himself is a writer, and it's a debut novel, right? It's a first novel, Shortcut to Tipperary, which has been already launched, but we are going to discuss it. So I'll start by asking Devidas Kadam to launch the book and have a few words. And Snigdha, who will conduct or rather converse with both the writers. Well, I will give it the honors to launch this book. It is just printed and out of printing press, you can say. So I'm very happy to do the honors. In Konkani, it is my what I is my mati, you know what is my mati, motherland, and the title of the book is The Mothersoil. I declare this book to be.
Where is?
So as we have begun with the book launch, I would like to welcome you all on this occasion. I hope you all are having a wonderful time at Gulf, a celebration of literature, ideas, opinion, and a festival that everyone can indulge in. So today we have two eminent writers from Goa, and of course two great orators from Goa, that's what I could say. To begin with, I would introduce you to Mr. Devidas Kadam. Mr. Devidas Kadam has been a Sahitya Akademi awardee. He is the author of the novel The Mothersoil, which was originally written in Konkani as My Mati and later translated into English. This novel, The Mothersoil, beautifully explores the themes of land, belonging, and the impact of government policies on common people, making us reflect on what truly anchors us to a place. His novel Dika earned him the prestigious Sahitya Akademi Award in 2007, and his novel Zanwai earned him the Vimla Pai Vishwa Konkani Award in 2019. I request Sir Devidas Kadam to say a few words on this occasion.
On this occasion, I would like to be much obliged to organizers of Gulf for giving me this opportunity to launch my novel, The Mothersoil, in this festival. I'm proud to say I'm a vernacular language writer. And this is my first English novel.
Yeah.
This novel speaks of today's condition, today's position of the society. It speaks of land dealing, land grabbing, easy money. Devastation of culture, devastation of regional occupation. Mainly it speaks of the farmers of a village called Shatari. There are plebeians, bourgeoisie, and gentry as well. It speaks of their culture. It speaks of their tradition, their festivities, mainly the changing mood and mindset after passing of a highway through their village. At the outset, before coming to the point, I find it fair, in the nutshell, I must tell my background. I belong to a family whose forefathers were agriculturists. At some point of time, a generation took turn and they embraced other occupations.
Oh my God.
They paid less attention towards agriculture,
Yeah.
neglecting it and treating it as secondary occupation. Over the years, they kept drifting away from this occupation. Later stage, they began selling their agricultural fields.
Great.
The question still haunts me. Was it necessary to sell the land? Why did they do so? Now, you know all, perhaps this novel is the outcome of my prolonged thinking. We all know food, clothing, and shelter are basic things for every individual of us. Among them, food is inevitable. No one can survive without food. Maybe the reason, one of the reasons that farmer was called king of the nation. When we speak of rural areas, the food security depends on agricultural occupation. It is said Indian villages are agricultural powerhouses. Nearly 3/4 of Indian families depend on rural income. India's food security is depending on producing cereal crops, vegetables, fruit and milk, and they are mainly produced in villages. 2/3 Indian population is engaged in agriculture. About 58% Indian population depend on agricultural occupation for their livelihood. Agriculture plays an important role in Indian GDP by providing income and employment opportunities. Agriculture plays an important role in the development of rural communities. And in this condition, at certain places, why I must say certain places, almost everywhere, in the village areas, farmers are seen turning their back towards their occupation, agricultural occupation, and walking away from it. the children of farmers having been educated are seen embracing some other occupation. They go away from their villages and settle somewhere, not to come back. And old age farmer generation, either they die or they leave old age people life in seclusion. Sometimes they go with the children. And as a result, once lush green fields are now seen either kept barren or gradually but surely being occupied with cement concrete buildings. Day by day, villages, the green color of the villages faded away.
It's like,
The village is losing its villageness.
it's like,
They lose their culture. And we find their festivities are at stake. At this juncture, the time has come to think over it. If we take it very lightly, we will have to face the dire consequences in near future. If same thing happens, keeps happening, what will be the fate of Indian agriculture? We have to ask ourselves question, why do the children of agriculture, farmers, they turn their back towards their ancestral occupation and try to get white collar jobs? If these agricultural fields are kept barren or are occupied by these cement concrete buildings, what would be the fate of future generation? This novel rightly traces the consequences, future consequences, and unfortunate situations that our younger generation would face. Also, it warns to be ready to take the bull by the horns. If you travel on a highway, you will see on both the sides of the highway, you find the same scenario. This novel depicts the similar position and story of a village. The stories are imaginary, characters are fictitious, even though they can be called typecast. Now, one thing we must remember that we have to think over this. This apparently looks very simple, but we have to face the dire consequences. It is said, politics without principle is of no use. Science without humanity is meaningless. Education without character is of no use. And fiction without message is meaningless. I tried my level best to give a strong message through this novel. And if this novel makes my readers think over this issue, I would say the pains I have taken to pen this novel are fruitful. There are, I remember a few lines, Hindi lines. of a song. I would like to conclude with that. The meaning of that, these lines are different in the movie, but here they are quite relevant to it. एक सूर्य है, एक गगन है, एक ही धरती माता, दया करो सब एक बने हम, सबका एक से नाता. And this is Dharani Mata. And we have to save our mother soil. I think this much is enough. Thanks for the patient listening.
Thank you, Mr. Devidas. As you very rightly said, that a novel, a fictional novel without a message is purposeless. And I think this novel, Mothersoil, features this intricate life lessons or hardships, or let's say the impact of all these policies that are there on common people. To continue, to go ahead, the second speaker or the author that we have today is Mr. Radharao Gracias, a very distinguished lawyer, political activist, and a writer. With a legal career of decades, he has earned the reputation as an impressive advocate and a passionate defender of Goan rights. A man whose sharp wit and deep love for Goa shine through his maiden novel, A Shortcut to Tipperary from Goa. His novel is a heartfelt attempt to capture the soul of disappearing Goa, blending fiction with real-life experiences in an engaging and entertaining way. Mr. Radharao, I would like you to say a few words about your book.
Okay.
Good afternoon,
Uh,
Mr. Kadam, Snigdha, and my fellow villager and very well-known writer, Damodar Mauzo, and of course, Devidas. I'm seeing a very young audience, and I am happy at that because this book details an age when I was more or less your age, at least the young people might think. See, my book is set in the 1970s when I was a teenager. So Sushila is also here. And the purpose of my book was actually an extension of what I've been doing all my life. I've been an activist and I've been always fighting to preserve my land and its values. But gradually I realized that with progress, with the passing years, you can't remain the same. But at least progress should be such that it does not destroy all that we have built. Sadly for me, Goa is advancing, but not in the way which most of us would have loved. Things are beyond our control. So the second best thing for me was to at least keep a record of how life was in the years when I was younger. And I thought it would be better to do so in the form of fiction rather than fact. And fiction because when I write fiction, no one can question me on fact, saying that this is wrong. Fiction is my own way of putting things across. And there cannot be anything wrong as such. Of course, there may be few errors here and there. Whereas if it was a book on facts, 100 people would challenge me. So I thought I am too old now to accept challenges. And I would just write a book of fiction. Now, my book is set in my own village of Majorda, and it spills over to the neighboring village of Betalbati, Love, Parga. Of course, one can't avoid, that's where I grew up, although it's not my village, it's our headquarters. And my book takes you through life in all these villages.
I'm sorry. How?
Now, of course, I can't explain the whole story to you here, but it is about it is essentially about a life that has been taking place in my village. You see, my village is predominantly, at least that time it was overwhelmingly Catholic. All people were Catholics. There were a few non-Catholics. And so my story naturally sat among the community which was there predominant and to which I belong. So all characters you will find there, not all, most of the characters are characteristics because that reflects the life in the villages. So description, everything would be from my point of view, which may not be exactly telling with many of you who have not grown up in a such village. But the purpose, as I've said, is to project life in the villages in those days. And life in my village meant that most people there, many worked abroad or worked on the ships. Many worked in East Africa, many worked in the ships, many worked in Bombay. And that trend has not changed. Today, only the places have changed. Today, people work in various other countries. They work in West Asia, Kuwait, Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia, Dubai. They work in UK. Now they are mostly settled in UK. They are settled in Canada, USA, Australia, all over. And my book is consequently is the story of a young man who grows in Goa, is brought up in Bombay of Goan parents, comes back to Goa and finally ends up in Ireland. And therefore this title, you may find it strange. Most of you may even know what is Tipperary. It's called a shortcut to Tipperary. Now if you Google and or rather you go on YouTube and Google for It's a Long Way to Tipperary, you'll come across a very old song, more than a century old song. It's a Long Way to Tipperary. It's a song which was very popular during the First World War. And since Goans, at least in my village, many Goans are musicians. Some of the country's top exponents of Western music come from my village, like Anthony Gonsalves, like those fellows who have recently made that movie, Natsuya Kumpasar, those Montserrat brothers. So many top musicians come from my village. So I had to project the view. I had to use everything that's common to my village. So in my village, music was very common, very popular. There are musicians in the book, there are seamen in the book, and of course, I could not miss the baker, the poder as we call it. Now it may interest you to know that the first bakery in Goa was set up in my village. It was set up, I believe, in the house of someone called Paisham Gomis in Gomiswado, Majorda. That is where they set up an oven, and that is where they started teaching the people to bake bread. And those who made bread, they, I am told, belonged to the Vaishya community, Vani, Vaishyas. They were otherwise Kajenkas who were making this cardio bodio. So the Portuguese, they discouraged people from eating the traditional foods. But then if you discourage them from making cardio bodio, they had to be given some other work. And the Portuguese they had loaves, they didn't eat chapatis. So they needed someone to make bread. So the Jesuits set up an oven, taught the people to make ovens. And from my village, Goans went all over Goa with their bakeries. Even if you go anywhere here, chances are that at least one of every two bakers would be from Majorda. Now, so that baker also figures in my village. Essentially, as I've said, the purpose was to keep my village life of that era alive. And so almost every football was very popular in my village earlier. Now I don't see too many playing football. So football also is there. Everything that I grew up in is contained in my book. So if those of you who are younger, who may not have seen life in the raw in those years, say 50 years ago, you may go through my book. If you read my book, I'm pretty sure you will enjoy it. And I have used, say I'm not very proficient in English in that sense because I did not study literature. I graduated in philosophy, then studied law, and I've been a lawyer. So from my point of view, my language is very simple. I don't think you'll find it difficult to understand. You may not have to go to a dictionary. It's easy flowing language. So I would request the younger people who are interested in knowing what life was in Goa in my younger days, please read my book. I'm sure it is still available, I think, with Broadway was selling books outside. And right now I think they give it to you at a discount, a substantial discount. The same thing also with the Mothersoil. Today if you buy, you'll get a big discount. Around, I think, 30-40% discount. That is the opening book discount. I have not known Mr. Kadam for long. His son is a lawyer, of course, with me, my junior to me. But I understand and I have heard and I have been told by many that he is a really gifted writer. I am really happy to meet him and to take a copy of his book, which I hope to read and maybe in due course review. Because people, when there's a book is written, for the writer there is no greater satisfaction than to see it sold. See, it is a writer's whole life is to sell the book. And mind you, we don't make profit on books in Goa. No one makes a profit. On the contrary, so much of time is put in. It's all a matter of satisfaction that I've written something and people read it. And when you read a book, you pick up something from it. There's always something good in a book. So I would also suggest you to pick up the book of Mr. Kadam, as I hope to read it. And you must encourage other people. If you like the book, if you all are young, I'm told some of you are students of BEd college, you must encourage other people, tell them this is a good book. And even if you find it's a bad book, you have to tell them it's a bad book. Because what is good for you, bad for them, for you may be good for them. You must still encourage them. It's a bad book, find out how bad it is. And that is what I do. I may not like a book, but I say, book you buy it. So essentially I went into writing around 15 years back by starting a column for the Herald, which I still continue. That happened because then editor of Herald, Sujay Gupte, is still now the chief editor, was a friend of mine who used to sit and talk. And he would, one day said, all the time you talk, all the time you give bashans, write something. And I started writing, and that it became a habit. I also got into the groove of writing. So to those of you who are here, young people, my request to you is, you can't become a good writer or a well appreciated writer unless you write. First thing is you write. You may write anything, but write. So those of you who are young, who think in terms of writing, who are good thinkers, you can't keep your thoughts to yourself. You have to take your thoughts to the world. And the best way is to by way of a book. So I would suggest to you all also, at least some of you, please write. If you don't write, you are nowhere. Whatever you are, you'll be forgotten and gone. Once you write a book, even 100 years from now, the book will be there somewhere in the library. It may be useful 100 years now to those who may want to know how life was here. If we know about our history, it is from ancient travelers who came here. Sadly, we Indians don't have a record of our own history. We depend on Hien Sang, Pa Hien, Ibn Battuta, Al-Biruni. We depend on Milinda Panna. You must have heard of Milinda Panna. Now, Milinda Panna is a book. It translates into Leaves of Milinda. Milinda is the Indianization of the Greek word Menander. Menander was the Greek king who embraced Buddhism and then wrote a record of his life. It has come down to us as Milinda Panna, and that is one of the records of our time 2000 years ago. So it is important that you write something. Some point of time what you write may be relevant and may be helpful. I thank all of you for so patiently listening to what I have said. Thank you.
So, see,
Yeah, thank you, sir. It was, of course, a very delightful talk that we had to hear from him. Now, speaking of the book, I think even though he says that it is a fictional book, every time as I was reading it, I had to remind myself that it is a fictional book, because the setting of the book is non-fictional, and the characters, the experiences that they are having is quite real. And that is very much beautifully written. So as we begin with this conversation with both Mr. Devidas Kadam and Mr. Radharao Gracias, I would also like to mention that both these books, The Mothersoil and A Shortcut to Tipperary, both these books have simple language. As Mr. Radharao has said, a language should be simple because the purpose of a writer, the purpose of a language is to share the ideas, opinion or thoughts to others, and which very well resonates in both these novels that they have written. So to begin with, without wasting much time, my first question is to Mr. Devidas Kadam. I want to ask you through these characters that are there in your novel, especially this character called as Dinkar. He has, everybody else in the novel has kind of accepted the change and they're enjoying with all the money that they have received due to the government policies or the new highway coming up in the village. But Dinkar somehow lives or enjoys living his life in the old way. So what do you have to say about this character and how have you tried to show the importance of one's culture and one's roots through this particular character in the story?
You asked about Dinkar.
I'm asking about Dinkar.
Yeah, Dinkar is, you see, he loves he's so much attached to his culture, his occupation, and a bit conservative type of person because when he himself passed matriculation,
We did not.
he intended to have further education going to Dharwad. And those days, you know, the story begins from 1969 and journey till date. And if you are not serious about the thing, it may go ahead also. So when he wishes, he wants to seek education, further education, he and himself, his cousin also, Damu, both they decide to go to Dharwad and get higher education. They are convinced by the parents how the agricultural occupation is important. What is the role of agricultural occupation in human being, in the life of human being? They convince it, and they are convinced, both of them. Both of them are convinced, and they follow the ancestral occupation. Here we see the Dinkar has been convinced, and he loves to be attached to his culture, his occupation, and he knows he's a visionary actually, to be frank. If you see throughout the novel, if you read Dinkar, you will come to know that he is a visionary and he knows, understood, this money will do nothing in near future. Ultimately, we have to fill our belly. So, the importance of food, understood. He tells the importance of food is more important than any other luxurious things. So he is contented, and also he loves his culture. Because you see, he is actually he is not a priest, but there is a kind of different kind of people they worship. They are not actually priests, but they are given that. There is a legacy of certain people in the village area that they worship. So he says that we have to do all these things, follow all these things, because they are hidden something, our roots. So Dinkar is such a, you see, when we compare with Dinkar and his nephew and his daughter Sugandha, so their IQ is better, but where the UQ is concerned, emotional quotient, they are weak in that. But here, Dinkar's IQ is also good and UQ is also good. Emotional quotient is also strong.
Okay. As Mr. Devidas has said, through this character, Dinkar, we also get to see a lot of emotional turmoil in his life. The detachment due to the new highway that has been built or constructed in the village, and the roots that he has, the cultural roots that he has, which bother him to, accept this modernity that is taking place in the village. Moving on to Mr. Radharao, my question to you is that at the very beginning of this novel, you have mentioned the coot, the rooms in Bombay. Can you just tell us how the coots brought the sense of community for people who lived in Bombay, Goan people who lived in Bombay?
Yeah, before I answer, I must tell you something, Snigdha. See, I've got to be very careful and cautious in answering your questions, because I have come here under a warning. Do not say anything to my friend from my daughter. So I'm to be very careful with you.
It's okay.
Your question is about the Kur. Yeah, you see, the Goans, at least in my side of Goa, when life was difficult, jobs were not available. they had to travel to Bombay to find jobs. But then if you go to Bombay, you had also, until you find a job, and even if you did get a job, you needed a place to stay. And here I think the church played a major role. The church organized the people to go to Bombay, and each village set up a club. In those days, places were available on the rent. So they hired big places. Now my village has their club, quite a large place on a building called Jair Mahal at Dobitala, in which there are many clubs. So villagers went, set up a club, and they framed their own rules. And there are beds, there are trunks, everything is there. They have a kitchen, they have time of entry, exit, all this was there. So it was a communal living, and only generally villagers from same village lived there. And these clubs are also named after the village patroness, village saint or church. So every club will be Penauli, St. John the Baptist, Majorda, Boa Morte, all these clubs carry the name of the village patron saint or whoever the church is dedicated. So these served a very useful purpose in those years, say 150 years ago, when people had to travel to Bombay. It is for this reason that you do not find any Goans living in slums in Bombay. You'll never find a Goan in a slum in Bombay. The only Goans you'll find in a slum in Bombay were those so-called aunties who distilled illicit liquor and sold. After all, as Soroi Kurpami, Goenkarangu, we were the first one to distill liquor in India. Mara, Soro, Kadu, Sorami, Katale. And with that, when you travel, you take all your good and bad things. So in Bombay, most of the liquor was initially being sold by aunties. So they would distill that. Otherwise, ordinary folks lived in the clubs. They had a very regular, and it was only for males. There was one room, family room, where people could bring their wife and they could stay for a couple of days. Otherwise, people would stay there permanently. In fact, this morning, a friend of mine visited me. I mentioned about him, and today he visited me. He brought me something. He had been to Dubai. His name is Shau Pereira. Now, this Shau studied in my village, and his father sent him to Bombay to study aeronautical engineering. And they were well-off people. They were not poor as such, not really poor. He told him, you have to stay in the club. Because they live communal life there. They learn everything. So he stayed there. He has retired as a senior aeronautical engineer with Emirates Airlines, and he's now come back to Goa. And he has also educated his children. Elder daughter is a pilot, and the younger two are both doctors, having postgraduated also from GMC, not by paying money. She is an ordinary soul, but you see, he tells me very clearly, Klaban apna munis kalom. This morning only he mentioned to me. He needed my help. He had come over. So these clubs have played a stellar role in organizing people and in giving them direction. I think that was the way. Today, no. Today most people have money, and no one would stay in those, those were not very, in those days they were good condition. But today not many people prefer to live in the goods.
Yes. So I think there was also this one concept wherein they had funds for those who were in need, especially from Goa. If anyone wants to come back to Goa, I think they had this funds to help them financially. So not just social.
Would contribute and
Yes.
keep a certain fund in case someone was in need
Yes.
or wherever. That money helped them to
Yes.
get basic needs until help arrived from Goa, or if he had to return back, they would take. See, it was a social organization that took care of the interests of the fellow members. Mostly they were from the village. Of course, even though we are Christians, we carried our caste with us. And those clubs are also, many were caste-based. Now Sushila is looking at here. Sushila's village club, Asalna village, there are many clubs, all caste-based. And in my village also, the club is also caste-based. But it is the reverse of what is there in Asalna Valley, Kukoli. ABC, the Gamkas, were essentially Kshatriyas. They had their clubs, others went later. In my village, the Kshatriyas didn't go to Bombay. They went with their bakeries was the big landed people lived in the village. So the Shudra caste formed the club there. And they, even now they are the Shardo, what we call Kshatriya, they are excluded from club membership in Bombay. And now, why you will know? You see, there's a friend of mine in Majorda, McLean-Dora. Now he's grown old like me. The other Tafi would fight everywhere. And whenever he was in trouble, police arrested him, he would come knocking on the doors. Are McLean ki dale? Dana, this is not supposed to answer it. Then one day he comes, Kide sangore to me. Am ke club tuka arrest na, tuka admission na, starting admission na, he would tell me. So one day he came knocking on the door. Are McLean, what for the club admission na? Police and sold the Lamy sold the police and arrest Gala sold Pami. I often remind him of that. I mean, this was a friendly joke with him. But that was the life in our villages in those days. Now things have changed. Even the caste is disappearing fortunately.
And there are Brahmin groups, I think. There were many foods, they were called foods.
Yeah.
Was there any food for Brahmin food like that?
To my knowledge, no. The Brahmins didn't live in goods. No, at least to my knowledge, there is none. No. No.
Yes, thank you, sir. My next question is to Mr. Devidas. Your novel has this one character called Soman, who is the landlord. He's portrayed as a miser, and despite of being a wealthy landowner, he takes the loss of 20 guntas of land under the highway to heart. So what do you hope to convey about human nature through this character?
Someone is a parsimonious person. He loses some more than 20 guntas land on the highway, but he is not ready to sacrifice that. On the contrary, he is so greedy because he gives loan and gets mortgaged others' land, and when in a stipulated time, if they fail to pay loan, he compels them to sell the land to him. This is a human nature, you see. This greedy, audacious or wolfish, these are the adjectives made for human character. Let me share you a small story I read, if I am not wrong. It is from Osho's book. Once a beggar came to a king with a bowl in his hand, and he asked for alms. King asked him, "How much do you want?" "Just to pull this bowl full of grains." So he ordered his servant, take him to the granary, and that person who is appointed there, in charge of that, he would give you grains. And he was taken there, and that person put some grains into his bowl. And but to his surprise, only few grains here and there he could see, and the rest of the bowl was empty. So he puts some more grains. Again the same condition, few grains here and there, and the bowl is empty. He went on pouring, kept on pouring, till the granary is empty. He was taken aback.
Right, sir.
So he told the beggar, "Just come with me." He took the beggar to the king and narrated the whole story. King asked, "Dear beggar, what's wrong with your bowl?" He said, "My lord, nothing is wrong with the bowl. Actually, this bowl is a human skull."
Which way? It is.
I think you must have got the answer. It was a human skull. Students, I am telling.
Yeah.
Yes, I think greed can actually shape one's identity, and that's what we learn through this character.
Yeah.
Moving on to Mr. Radharao, I would want to ask you that whether you have consciously used the theatro style in the book, in the novel, or is it your love towards theatre that is quite vividly depicted in the novel?
See, actually, I am not a theatre goer. I think in all my life, I must have attended 3 or 4 theatres. And that too because I was an invitee there, sometimes the chief guest. Otherwise, you see, 3 hours I don't have patience to look through a theatre. But I appreciate what the theatrists do. In fact, I've just completed an article. It should appear on the 24th of this month. It is called Opinion Poll and the Theatrist for the Herald. But maybe subconsciously, but essentially I am not a theatre goer. But a good number of going theatrists come to me for any work or every work, even now. The moment they write some song critical of someone, because singing they'll come to see me. Like the Francis Maro. How about? See, they are scared that policemen trouble them. Lot of them are my friends. So but otherwise no. Essentially, you see, if you must see, I start my novel. I take off my novel from. You must have read The Alchemist. You have read. So in my novel start this. The narrator, the one who appears in the dream, is the same. In the end, you will realize if you go through the end, you will realize that my protagonist, Ishmael, has a dream, and it is Santiago, the protagonist of Alchemist, who appears in the dream and sends him.
I think the story starts with a dream and ends with a dream.
Yes. And it is that fellow who, that is Alchemist hero, who comes in a dream to my hero and sends him chasing his dream. Yes. So it is sort of, it involves a lot of magic realism, my book. Yes. So I thought I would start with, because that's a book of magic realism, The Alchemist. Yeah.
I know that we have only 5 minutes or so. My most important question to Mr. Devidas is that in your novel, you have incorporated places like Kankon, Sadashivgarh, Karwar, and you have not mentioned the political boundaries anywhere. So was this a conscious choice to tell us that the culture, the belief systems, the traditions are the same in Goa and the neighboring states?
Actually, this political boundaries and all this, I am not conscious about all these things, because Sadashivgarh, Karava, and Kankona, Kukadi, these are one social group. The culture is same, language is same, duties are same, and they are relatives. The girls from Kankona get married into Karwa or Sadashivgarh, that area, and girls from that area get married into this. So this is that, and actually we are related to each other, and because of the political boundaries, we have been separated, but otherwise we are blended together in such a way that that political line disappears almost. You see, there is a popular song, folk song, I shall tell you, it is in Konkani. There are 5 konas altogether, and Mallikarjun, that ditty, Mallikarjun ditty in Kankona, he wanders there in all these 5 konas. Konas means areas. You say Kankona, this is in Goa, this Kankona belongs to Goa. Then there is Hernkona, Karwar area, Katin Kona, Karwar, Malay Kona, Karwar, and Kona. Actually, the real name of Karwar is Kon. And there is a song, Soya Samdikanchi, Pansamchi Kona, Ai Ghar Kankona. You say, Maushi Dilya Hankona, Bain Dilya Katin Kona, Baile Ghar, Malay Kona. And माझे घर कोणा सोयऱ्या संधिकांची 5 आमची कोणा. So this relation is there, and so it naturally comes when I depict all these things there in my novel. So I purposely I didn't do that, naturally it came.
Perfect. And I also think that it's experiences that share or rather form someone's identity than political boundaries. My next question is to both of you all. I know that in both the novels, there's a mention of folk songs, traditions. How important do you think for us, writers or readers, to preserve our culture, especially the Goan culture, through our work? Yeah, we can begin with Mr. Devidas.
You see, these things also naturally come because writers are the keen observers. They pick up the characters from the society and the incidents, experiences, what they collect from society. Because you see, the things doesn't come out from within. It comes in. We take those things in from without, you see. Because the characters are there everywhere. So, and the characters are, or the stories are blended with that particular culture, that area which we depict in. And when we write there, the stories belong to that particular area, so the cultural aspects, maybe folk songs, folk stories, whatever it may be, which is most relevant to that particular topic, subject matter, naturally they come. Purposely, writer doesn't bring that, understood? And writer shouldn't bring. So naturally it comes because they are totally associated with it. They have been mingled with that. The things, it is a compact, comprehensive thinking line. You see, fiction and realism. Between them, there is a thin line. And the writer blends them in such a way that thin line disappears and realism becomes fiction.
Thank you, sir. What is your take on it, Mr. Radharao Gracias?
See, what happens is essentially, a book is a reflection of life. And for me, my book is a reflection of the life that I live. And I have consciously placed my book in actual surroundings. I have taken care to see that everything is described authentically. My village, whatever, everything. Only the storyline is fiction. Of course, even in the storyline, there are a few actual happenings which I have twisted and turned to make it more fiction. But otherwise, the purpose was to show Goa in its true light. And folk songs or Ladain and whatever is to happen, that's all reflected there. Because my purpose was essentially to preserve the Goa that is lost now. And I'm sure that happens with every civilization. You see, as we progress, old things are lost. Only thing what has happened in Goa is we have marched ahead too quickly in one generation. Normally progress is from very slowly, step by step. I have seen how life has changed so drastically from my time as a young man to now. My children don't even believe what I tell them, how the type of life we led. They don't believe that. They can't imagine life without cars, without light, without telephones. They are struggling. But we grew up in that era. That is why my book is a reminder to the people that this is the sort of life we led.
Yeah, as you said, due to this increase in digital world, do you think that regional identity and literature may fade away? Or what is your opinion about it?
See, what happens is, literature is literature. But nowadays, I think literature is also losing its importance. People don't read books. I am a product of my reading. At home, we were brought up day in and day out to read. My father would force us to read, all of us children. And we are 8 of us, 5 girls and 3 boys. All of us would read at home. But nowadays, people get everything on the fingertips. They just Google and they're happy with the little information they get. When you read a book, you get a whole, the entire life of the characters, everything. That I don't think is happening. So we are moving now into a world where we want quick results. And that's available by just reading small tidbits.
There we go.
I think that's an excellent advice for many of these youngsters sitting in front. Yes. So I know that the time is up. We had a lot more questions, but I would want to ask if anyone has any question from the audience. Let's leave the session open for discussion. So if anyone has a question for both these eminent writers, please raise your hands. We would pass the mic to you all.
You must believe around Devidas, how much you want to talk to me?
Helped.
what exactly inspired you to write this topic in the form of novel? Not why not in a short story? Because you are a short story writer also, isn't it?
It's a good question. Actually, I expected this question from Snigdha. You see, I live in such a village. Bhai didn't talk there. You have come to my place and you have seen the surrounding areas, all these things. Once it was a lush green area, you see, for all 12 months. So now that if you go there, even I, myself, when I go there, though I forget everything. I can't identify which water is where, from the ways, everything has changed. So the all agricultural fields have been, I don't know how they have been transformed into non-agricultural. How? I don't know, that's the big question mark. But you will see the buildings are coming up, have already come up, hotels and the big buildings and a lot of mansions. And the old culture is almost lost. I have experienced all these things actually, to be frank. So I said that it is a typecast, characters and all the things I have experienced. And I am also part of that. I am also a part of that. And so I am also equally responsible for that. So this is so ridiculous and so it's so sad to see all these things. And this couldn't be captured in a story. This is a subject for a novel. At a broader sense, I could, you see, even this Dhalomand and all these things have been depicted in, are not seen there, are not there, not there. Nobody performs there now. The Shigmo, very few people understood. As a just formality, they do all these things. And that inspired me. Actually, this novel was there for 10 years in my head. It was waiting to come out. And at last, and once I told Bhai, first, Bhai, I asked, sir, this is the subject. Bhai, may I write? Bhai said, oh, by all means, why not? Then I asked Sailmam. Sailmam said, you should write. And I wrote it. And it came first in Konkani Maimati as Maimati. And most of the people, most of the readers, they told me to translate it into English, but I am not in favor of translation, so I rewrote it in English.
Anyone else?
Hey, it's always good. All of it. You're still feeling now. Yeah.
Friends, you have been witness to the discussion between the two great writers, I would say. You know, one is Devidas Kadam, who has written voluminous novels in Konkani. This is the first novel that is translated into English. But then we have Radharao Gracias here, who is, as he has told you, he belongs to my village. So we both have, Radha and me, both have been privy to the village life of the same village, Mothersoil. But the depiction is different. Though I belong, I don't like to say that, but I belong to the other community. But for me, I am an insider. And as an insider of Mothersoil, whatever I write is about my people, who are irrespective of the religion, irrespective of caste. Whatever I see, I have depicted, it has been depicted in my novels. Whereas this is the first time that Radharao has attempted a novel. The other day I was in conversation with him and I found that, I myself found that most of the episodes in this novel are by character short stories. Each chapter, I would say, is not chapterized as such, but then each chapter would run like a short story. Very interesting read. I request all the youngsters to try and lay your hand on this book. If you can't afford, go to the library and buy it. Insist the library to keep this book with you. Because this is the depiction of any, not only Mothersoil village, depiction of any rural territory in our Goa. Whether you go to Madruda or Banaulim or Varka, it is the same ambience you will find. The same people you will find. Good and bad people exist in every village, whether it is city or village, they exist everywhere. It is up to the writers to bring up the truth. Yes, and my friend Devidas just now said that it is, what did you say, reality and?
Fiction and
Yeah,
realism.
yeah. The fiction and the reality are the two sides of the same coin. Sometimes, sometimes reality is stranger than fiction. We can imagine different things in fiction. Now, Radharao's book starts with some magic realism. He has attributed to what he read in Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. If I don't know most of you, I expect young writers, young students to read the books like Paulo Coelho's Alchemist or many other books. He picked up from that, the thread from that, that's all. Otherwise, entire book has no magic realism, it is reality. But what he did is, I don't want to give away the secrets, but I am trying to arouse the interest in you to buy the book, read the book, because it is a novel way of writing a novel, I found. So do read these two books by two Goan writers. One, the Mothersoil. The Mothersoil, probably, and I hope that it will arouse the patriotism, love for nature, love for the mother soil in you. And secondly, to have a taste of the village life of 50 years back. Do read Radharao Gracias novel, Shortcut to Tipperary. Thank you for attending this. I would have loved to have more questions thrown to the authors to make them talk. I know both the authors are here for the first time at the Gulf. I welcome you and I expect another book next year.
Thank you.
Might come back.
Good. I'm very happy for that, and let's have it for discussion next time. And let's have an exclusive discussion so that we will know the author and his whatever he writes, and we will have a better interaction, I hope. And also Devidas Kadam, who is very fluent speaker, and his writing also is much loved in Konkani, but this is the first time he is addressing an audience like this at the Gulf. So I welcome you, and I hope next year we'll have another book in translation so that we can we can discuss the book. Thank you both, and Snigdha also, for the first time she is here, and good experience. I'll remember it next time you have to be here, because we generally don't find people to converse with, the authors who come from outside. This morning, whoever present here, I'm taking time because I know there is no next session immediately. So rather we had wonderful sessions this morning, and particularly the one with Manu Pillai was excellent. At core he is an historian. He is a historian, but yet the depiction is so well, and his articulation was so good. He kept mesmerized. So I was really impressed by that, and I always feel that such writers, such discussions come from Goa. So next time we have Snigdha in mind, and maybe the students who are attending now this session next time will be useful for us to go between the authors. And I advise you, there are many writers of great stature present here, and don't think they are inaccessible. They are here. The climate, the ambience in this Gulf, in this Lit Fest is of India. This is probably one of the few literature festivals that happen in India which are intimate, where you can easily access any author, any writer, and ask him a question. He will be glad to answer your question. Please be friendly, be intimate, but at the same time do attend the sessions and try to gain some knowledge from that. Of course, you are doing that, and I was very happy. I'm just taking more time. Recently, this month, a fortnight back, I attended two literature festivals, one in Kokrajhar, right on the border of Bhutan, where the crowd was huge. Everybody that was, part of Bodoland. So most of the tribals, they attended with vigor, I would say. This is happening in my land. Let's go and attend. And every hall was packed with the students and other people also. But then there were hardly any questions, or rather related to literature. And the next session I attended was at Dibrugarh University. Dibrugarh again, on the other part of the east, far east, and I was from far west. And I noticed the students' community was so responsive. They were so attentive at every session. I really was all praise for them. And I expect our literary interest among you growing every year with every edition of Goa Art and Literature Festival. And I expect you in a bigger strength and in more attendance, and also become more responsive to the sessions that are going on. Thank you, everybody. You gave your precious time by remaining present here. We have Mr. Mahare, who is a Marathi writer, well-known writer, Narayan Mahare. We have Sushila Manjis, we have Pashu Menon here, who contributes regularly to newspapers, and also he has books to his credit. We are going to have another session tomorrow discussing Pashu Menon's book. Thank you very much on behalf of Goa Art and Literature Festival.